Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 200. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Scorsese and Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, fellas?
200, 200, 200.
Indeed,
Special
indeed.
number 200, but I'll open by saying this: fuck this snowstorm.
Yeah, Daniel's going through that thunder snow, as they calling it, in NY. So yeah, uh, I feel for him because I've never heard of a thunder snow until today. But on my Twitter feed and whatnot, yeah, people in the Northeast they dealing with it right now. So yeah, uh, for those who are new, Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, and blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, blog page is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.wordpress.com is the link. Check the right of the page. You'll find links to our pages and channels on G+, YouTube, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, and the Twitter handle is at P4P Box Report. You also look to the right of the page. You can find links to where to listen to the show on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, Player FM, as well as Mixcloud. Let's get the show started. Big weekend in boxing, starting with the main fight, the fight that most people were talking about, of course. Deontay Wilder, Luis Ortiz took place Saturday night on Showtime at Barclays in Brooklyn. Wilder ended up winning by 10th round stoppage early. 4 rounds, I would say. The action was rather mundane. Both fighters seemed cautious, wary of each other's power. In the 5th round, Wilder struck, putting Ortiz down with the right hand. In the 7th round, Ortiz caught Wilder with a right hook, and then a subsequent left had Wilder badly hurt along the ropes at the end of the 7th round. But you have to give Wilder his credit. He was asked, some questions were asked of him in this fight. He got hurt. He survived. He pulled through. He weathered the storm, if you will. And he came back in the 10th round, hurt Ortiz badly, put him down. A subsequent follow-up knockdown, and the referee started the fight. I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. Your thoughts of the fight, your level of excitement. Did Wilder pass any test for you?
And the tests I'll get into a little bit. The fight started slow. I expected it to start slow because obviously we have the orthodox southpaw mix. And when Wilder was last presented with that, he did start slow again against Archer Spilka. But the fight started getting better. Ortiz started getting more brave. Wilder started getting more brave. And it built up to a really decent fight. The main questions that were answered for Wilder is, does he have a chin? He kind of answered that one emphatically in the 7th round, where Ortiz hurt him pretty bad. Started going to the body constantly, but Wilder did not go down. Even tried to catch and shoot or clinch. And didn't try to hurry up to his corner. He walked calmly. He sat there and then got himself back into the fight, 8th and 9th round, and having 2 vicious knockdowns in 10th, and finally ending the fight on a really short uppercut that you knew he had some torque in it. Dropped Ortiz to his knees. Referee, by the way, the same referee that refereed Joshua Klitschko last year.
Yep.
Stopped this fight dead in its tracks. And Wilder, like I said, the main question was, can Wilder take a punch? What does Wilder do when presented with somebody that can outbox him consistently throughout the fight? And you pretty much got your answers. He remained calm. He didn't try to rush anything. And he let the offense come to him because ultimately it had to take Ortiz taking the risk of trying to land his left to let Wilder have room to throw the right hand. And he did answer, like I said, plenty of questions. You can now say he's been tested. against the man who, let's face it, Eddie Hearn signed to keep as far away from Anthony Joshua as possible. And that's a big cap in his resume. It is this year's Joshua Klitschko.
Your thoughts, Scorsese?
First, I have to say, it's going without being said that recent Cuban history has been made in pro boxing just repeatedly, and it is going to continue. It's even on this docket for this show. Rigondeaux, first loss, finally gets his first loss. I can't say 2018, but recently. It's just a string of history. For me, I'll go through them. Rigondeaux, first loss. Luis Ortiz, 7th round TKO, first Cuban heavyweight world champion. Sullivan Barrera, the same night. First Cuban to be cursed by Superman Stevenson curse, and then to own up to being cursed and tell me thank you. And I have the documents to prove that. Erislandy Lara attempting to be the first unified Cuban 154-pound champion, and Rancis Bartholomew attempting to be the first three-division Cuban champion. So it's a lot of freaking Cuban history being made, and it just went unknown to us. And some just brought that up to me out of nowhere. But for me, you heard it, man. I thought that last punch in the 7th. If they say you can't be saved by the bell, I thought that last punch done it. Now, when I'm watching live with Daniel, I must say I'm just into it. Me and Daniel talking over each other. Daniel's actually ahead of me, so I'm like, oh shit, what the fuck happened? And I just get through it. And he's like, okay, Wilder made it through, and I'm like, I'm not assessing what's going on. But as I go back and I watch, I'm thinking, man, that last shot, Wilder his hands were flat. He was everywhere. He was gone. And the referee was more worried about stopping Ortiz, and then they take him to the corner in 8th. And I'm just like, oh, man, if you thought he needed a doctor, maybe you just go ahead and stop the fight and send him to 1. And Ortiz feel that way, too, in a way. I guess I mean, the fight did go on, is what it is, but I saw what I saw with my eyes. I felt it was a stoppage, but I understand millions talk, and it is what it is. They would talk to me too. I wouldn't have stopped it either. Wilder does get to go on though. Luis Ortiz has to clean up or whatever, maybe even a rematch, but Wilder gets to go on. One thing he gonna have to clean up, depending on where he fight Anthony Joshua, is the way he sometimes can club with his forearms and sometimes hit around the back of the neck when he does it, or the neck area, because he got warned with that with Ortiz. The referee, during the knockout sequence, the referee says, don't hit him in the back of the head. 3 seconds later, 2 seconds later, Wilder throws the same punch with a different arm, and he clubs him even harder, and Ortiz, goes into the ropes after that, and the uppercut is then landed. Just he got to clean it up. He is competitive with whoever he fights. I don't think Ortiz Wilder was on par with Klitschko Joshua, just because of the foot speed and size that both of them shared. Joshua and Klitschko, that was not shared here. One man had a lot of advantages. Those two were very, very close. And even before the fight, I thought Joshua would run him over, but Klitschko actually showed up and came to fight. So I still got questions about Wilder with taller individuals, explosion of Joshua and things like that. That's still questions. But the right hand, I have to say, is lethal. But at the same time, as competition steps up, it is doing what most power does. It shows, the competition shows you, your power isn't as important as your craft for the most part. Not all the time, but his is showing that as the competition goes up, maybe the right hand ain't as great as he thought, but it's still very lethal.
This is great because when he lands it, he still hurts guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll hurt anybody he hit. Follow-up question. Do you take away from Lennox Lewis what he did against Michael Grant because of the way that fight ended?
I ain't watched it in a while. I'm not really a Lennox Lewis follower, where I know his whole career from the night. I really don't. I don't really like the heavyweight division like that, to be honest with you. But I do see some people getting on the Lennox for that, and I couldn't blame them if it was truly dirty. Then I think I have seen videos of people showing it. If it is dirty, it's dirty. But It just is what it is. I'm saying it might not even be called in most fights. Sometimes it ain't, because our sport isn't like football. If you get a pass interference on the drive ending, the last drive of the Super Bowl, if it's pass interference, they gonna call it. They gonna stop. They gonna get it right. But our sport is, yo, we're better ref in the amateurs than we are in the pros. If you watch amateur boxing, it doesn't matter when it is. If you slap or if you tuck, they gonna stop you for 5 seconds and let you know what you're done. So I mean, no matter who the person is, you know, it's their job just to get it right, and then it's the ref job to get it right. But in pro boxing, we don't. So I mean, it's just my take.
Okay, I hear you, but I just don't want to. I don't think it's as blatant as I've heard others say. One and two, I don't want to have that thrown up to put an asterisk on his performance. Yes, Deontay Wilder is flawed. We knew that coming in, and it's still showing itself to be afterwards. But he did what he had to do, and I don't want to mar what he did just because of that. And besides, a lot of fighters are flawed, and a lot of fighters have to make adjustments. There's no perfect fighter. Moving forward, the obvious fight is Wilder Joshua. Wilder said after the fight, let's make the fight happen now. You hadn't heard much from Hearn or Anthony Joshua. Of course, they're preparing to fight Joseph Parker later on this month. The question is, following what we saw, how do each of you feel? Each of you, how closer are we to that fight possibly happening?
I'm clueless on when they make it. So many different things, and you know, they got to get splits right. They got to give locations right. It's so many different things, and it'll play out in the media. And hopefully, if for our sake, it won't play out in the media, and they'll get it done. They'll sit down. They'll be quiet about it. But that ain't how it seems to work these days. They know if you look at Wilder, he got his biggest pay-per-view, his not pay-per-view, but he got his biggest TV numbers on Showtime. Well, cable numbers on Showtime after all this controversial things he's been doing. So why not keep? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if both parties shaking their hands say, we're gonna milk the cow. Like, say whatever you want, we'll say it back. I would not be shocked. But assessment wise of the fight, if you know, if I can get in that, man, I think Wilder can land the right hand every now and then. I think the head movement of Joshua is underrated, and his ability to get that big arm up there and block the right hand and the left hook, I think that's underrated. I think he did a interview earlier where he said Fury is actually the tougher fight, and I agree. Fury's tougher for both of them. Like, he's a bad stylistic matchup for either one of them, and the easier win for maybe Wilder beats Fury easier because he, you know, much longer, tries to hit you across the ring. Fury could be trying to get out, and Wilder could land something heavy. Joshua could too, but I don't know. Just something tells me that they are better fighting each other than they are fighting Fury, and that's if Fury could possibly return to the guy that can move around the ring and make it boring and, you know, play with you and just peck you with jabs and win a fight. That's a tough fight, but I think Wilder Joshua right now, I would say 60-40 Joshua, and sometime I even feel 65 Joshua. But yeah, I wish they would go ahead and make it for 2018 late or the summer, but it ain't. I don't see it. 19.
Well, in terms of Fury, he's been inactive for so long. He's irrelevant. He's talking more than he's fighting. So right as of right now, to me, he's not in the picture until he gets his butt back in the ring. Finally, I'll go to you, Daniel. The question on the table: given what we saw this past Saturday, if you had to give if you had to give a percentage, how closer are we to seeing a Deontay Wilder Anthony Joshua fight?
Well, considering Eddie Hearn's supposed plans, we're not that close, unfortunately, because apparently Eddie Hearn wants to throw Big Baby Miller in front of Joshua for his American debut. Now, I don't know if that's a power play to have Showtime shell out a lot more money because Big Baby now fights for HBO and he's not signed to Matchroom. But it does look like this fight. If we had our say, it would be in the fall. It would probably be a month after Mexican Independence Day weekend, sometime in October. Because I don't know who that person was during the post-fight press conference, but I guess he's like Wilder's business manager or agent. Decided to pull the receipts on Eddie Hearn. It's actually not Eddie Hearn, Barry Hearn, the patriarch of Matchroom, the guy who actually makes the decisions. And he revealed in an email that they were talking as recently as November last year about a fight.
For clarity, just to let folks know, in the post-fight press conference, I think it was Finkel? Yeah. Shared a letter between him and Eddie Hearn, dated November 29th to be the specific date, talking about a fight, and Hearn said we will get back to you and see if we can make business. And according to them, Wilder's side, they haven't heard anything from Hearn since.
Not only that, they were boasting about the fact that they could bring 20,000 Brits like they did for Ricky Hatton against Floyd. So there's interest on both sides, but I take it into the fact that this is a promoter's game, unfortunately. And while Wilder may want to fight, while Joshua may want to fight, it keeps looking like the Hearn family doesn't want to fight. Because they keep putting obstacle after obstacle or stopgap after stopgap. And they can't really do it now with this knockout. Are you going to tell Deontay Wilder after he knocked out Luis Ortiz, you still have to fight Dillian White? They're not going to be able to do that. But it also depends on probably how Joshua looks against Parker. Because if it comes out to be a lazy performance, if Parker winds up hurting Joshua to the body, they may say, yeah, let's wait until 2019. Let's wait until the summer 2019 to make this fight. Try to see maybe if Wilder can get another injury that keeps him out of the ring. Now, as far as Tyson Fury goes,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm got the background. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. Well, as far as Tyson Fury goes, I'll take him seriously once he stops preparing for the NFL draft and starts preparing for the boxing ring. Because right now, I don't know, my Dolphins may need him at left tackle. He's looking pretty good for the left tackle right now.
Indeed. So yeah, he weighs like I don't know what his weight. Look, put it this way: he has lost some weight. There is video of him training, whatnot, but still, the proof is in the pudding. And until I see him in the ring, and then again, I will take him seriously. It's long enough where he's basically rested on his laurels from beating Klitschko. That's not enough anymore. The division is moving on without him, and it's up to him to make the move, to consider to become more relevant. And part of that move is getting in the ring, and that's what folks should demand. Get him in the ring. Less talking and fight. Less talking and fight. Let's move on to bout took place on the undercard, main undercard of this main event of this Barclays show. Jose Uzcategui fighting Anthony Dirrell, rematched their first fights last year, ended in controversial fashion. Uzcategui, who was winning, in my eyes, the fight got lost via disqualification for landing a punch on Dirrell slightly after the bell, and then chaos ensued with Dirrell's uncle jumping in the ring and bombarding and beating folks up to the point that the police were looking for him after the fight. Well, they fought the rematch, and I don't know what was worse, Scorsese. I don't know what was worse, the way Dirrell performed or the incompetence that was his corner from jump, particularly, what was it, 8th, 9th round? What was that?
Personally, I had it on mute watching it with Daniel, so I can only really talk about the corner in the sense of how I saw them acting when he wanted to stop the damn fight and they wanted to stop the fight, and then he didn't want to stop the fight, and then they didn't want to stop the fight, and then he stopped the fight. I was just like, what? I'm like, Virgil Hunter, bro, you're not even getting in the ring to talk to him as he's losing the fight. I don't know. It didn't matter what they said in the first place. It didn't matter what they told him to do regardless. And I think Virgil Hunter may have knew that. I could tell this kid to go out here and do the perfect game plan. Uzcategui is just better right now. He's quicker right now. He has better stamina. I don't know why I'm messing that damn word up as of late. I keep wanting to say stamina. Dan the damn man is doing that shit to me because he says stamina. Jesus. Stamina. God dang it. But anyways, like I said, Uzcategui had better punch selection. He had every punch in the book. He could throw it coming forward. He could throw it in the pocket. He was too strong, and there's too much power for him. So I won't even go deep on the trainer. The fighter just is not the fighter he needs to be. He's not what he used to be. Is just not there no more. And I don't think it's the dog, the level of heart he has. It just sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. And he's taking a lot of punishment. And his time is now is in the area where you can't do it, and it is what it is. Uzcategui may be the best 168-pound out there. He actually may be that.
I don't know about that. That's jumping the gun right quick, especially after this performance given the Dirrell we saw. But I will go to Daniel on this one. I have said on other shows that Andre Dirrell is a never was. A guy who had potential to do real things, but never had that final piece of the puzzle. He never had those intangibles to take him over the top. Not only that, I question whether Dirrell really recovered from a mental standpoint. I see Gus from Corruption in Boxing has joined us. Thanks for joining us, Gus. I'll go to you quickly, but I'll go to Daniel talking about this fight. Can an argument be made that Dirrell never really fully recovered from that Abraham fight and the way it ended and the subsequent layoff?
You can even go as far back as the Carl Froch fight in a way. And that's a fight many people argue he won. The thing, unfortunately, with Andre Dirrell, and this relates to the two sets of the Dirrell brothers, they each have the one thing the other lacks. You take Anthony Dirrell, he has a dog, he has some great tenacity. He just doesn't have the skill set to be at the top of the super middleweights. Andre Dirrell, he has the skill set, but he doesn't have the tenacity to last the fight. And that showed throughout the fight. As soon as Uzcategui landed his first right hand flush, it was flush. And Dirrell did almost no adjustment in the fight to stop it. You kind of knew what kind of night you're supposed to have. Hell, actually, this fight almost didn't happen in the way. Before the fight, Jim Gray was talking to Uzcategui, and apparently, well, now it's supposedly due to vitamin C deficiency. The urine test that Uzcategui gave the New York State Athletic Commission appeared to look like it had blood in it. They took the urinalysis. They took it to the local hospital. I keep forgetting which hospital is closer to Barclays. And they analyzed it, and everything went fine. And then Uzcategui decided to just, manhandle, in a way, Andre Dirrell. And when it comes to that corner, it's become, unfortunately, pretty obvious that Andre Dirrell quit the fight. Because I think Virgil was trying to give him any chance to come into it, but I think even Virgil saw that he was not in the fight. And ultimately, it doesn't end, unfortunately. He's a I think it's Marcus Dupree. The name that I think about, like the guy that had the 30 for 30 documentary from Oklahoma. Great running back, never panned out in the NFL. Documentary is called The Best That Never Was. You can make a part 2 of that when it comes to Andre Dirrell. In the ways he is in the super middleweight, in a way, the best that never was. He had all the potential, but it lacked. And like I said, it goes back to the Froch fight, when you can argue that he won the fight, but Froch wound up winning. And it just goes to show you that boxing is a cruel game. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're lacking the intangibles, you won't last long, unfortunately.
I said Gus from Corruption in Boxing is joining us. Unmute your mic. Gus, I want you to talk about this fight with Dirrell and Uzcategui too, as well. I want you to talk about this fight between Dirrell and Uzcategui, but first I want to go back a bit. And since it's been a while since you've been on here, I want to give the opportunity to give your impressions on Wilder and Ortiz, what you saw, what you liked, what you didn't like. And I'll ask the question to you as I asked to Scorsese and Daniel. Given this win, given how Joshua performed, are we any closer, in your estimation, to a Wilder-Joshua fight?
Hey, Mike, mad respect on reaching 200, first of all.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anybody who can put up with Kell and especially charismatic Carpio for half the 200 deserves a medal. Yeah. Wilder Ortiz, Mike. You've probably seen the video that I put out, sort of a preview and prediction video. But the fight itself, I think Wilder came out, Mike. I think he had absolutely no idea on how to fight a southpaw. And that all stems from his foot positioning as opposed to his footwork, because he is quite a mobile athlete. He can cover the ring relatively quickly because of his athleticism. But Luis Ortiz must have thought it was Christmas, because we talk about the lead foot advantage a lot in boxing. Now, when it comes to an orthodox and southpaw, the lead foot advantage is far more important to a southpaw, and Luis Ortiz knew that, primarily because if he has his foot on the outside and he keeps shifting to the right, which is the correct thing to do, it gives him a direct line of sight for his left hand at all times. And because he's moving, the left hand is always open to him. And what it else does, it effectively takes out Wilder's jab from the equation, because he has to shift his body to the left by 90 degrees for him to even get off a jab. But in a southpaw shifting, moving to the right, it does open up Wilder's right hand. But because Ortiz was doubling up the jab and moving, it means his head position, the axis of his head, is a moving target. So therefore, Wilder can't home in with his right hand. And I think the stats even show that Wilder was very reticent in the early rounds The fact that he did throw one or two right hands, but because Ortiz was very quick with a left counter, that kept Wilder very, very that kept him, that reserved his right hand to a certain extent. But his jab was pretty much ineffective. I think he landed less than 5 jabs, certainly for the first few rounds. I think round 3 hardly even landed a jab. So the judges who had Wilder winning 2 of the first 4 rounds are clearly, are they incompetent, or have they clearly been under a mandate to give any advantage to the champion? Because champions do get advantages. So, but we know Mike Wilder is not a sort of fighter that fights. He doesn't accumulate points. He doesn't fight to bank rounds. That's not him at all. He'll either knock you out cold, and thus 19 first round knockouts illustrates that, or he softens you up and knocks you out. He doesn't break you down and knock you out, because he's one of those anomalies that we talk about when you take a puncher into deep waters, they're spent. But he's not really that sort of fighter. He's shown that he does have the stamina to last 12 rounds, and his punching power does last 12 rounds as well.
Born power, Gus. Born power, and it's rare for a big guy to maintain stamina over that distance.
Yeah, but the thing is, Mike, that he doesn't work 3 minutes of every round, nor does his opponents induce that sort of workload pouring, primarily because they're so afraid of his right hand. They're not going to collapse the pocket straight away and try and engage with him. But we know that Wilder at short and mid-range is not as effective. So he'll poke and prod with that jab just to create the distance, because he knows he's most effective with that right hand, specifically from long range. So Ortiz was doing reasonably well for the earlier rounds, doubling that jab to prevent a counter punch landing. Wilder only landing minimal punches, but as Ortiz's gas tank began to deplete, and quite rapidly, and there's no surprise there, Mike. Wilder have confiscated his nandrolone. He's a 50-year-old guy as well, so there's no surprise he's going to. There's no surprise his gas tank is going to deplete rapidly. So eventually, what happens? They both land simultaneous right hooks. Wilder turns on that wild style, puts him down. Ortiz, recovers. A lot of the other punches are not really flush on his chin, but Ortiz has a good 7th round, as we know. He lands that counter right hook, trying to roll under the punches, turning his head to the right to get underneath that right hand that was coming, so he could fire that right hook. That put Wilder on queer street, as we know. He went into some crazy survival mode, excessive holding and clinching, but it's desperation, but it's illegal at the end of the day. I didn't see the referee too keen on separate them, so I think Wilder got all of the benefit of the doubts in this fight, Mike. All roads are leading to Joshua and Wilder. There's far too much money to be weighed. They're not going to allow any intermediate fights to curtail the money for the television networks, the sanctioning bodies, the promoters, the sponsors that are involved as well. We know the rules of the Athletic State Commission, in which they have they're actually legally indicted to check on the welfare of the fighters. But the guy only looked into Wilder's eyes for 2 seconds. Surely they could have done it at the end of the round. No need to do it at the beginning. Send a man to a neutral corner. I timed it was about 35 seconds in total, but whether it's valuable or not, I guess history will say it. But I felt it was, I felt it was unnecessary, but I think it was a strategic. I think it was definitely, allowed, Wilder to recuperate just that little bit more. But whether it would have made a difference in hindsight, I'm not sure. Luis Ortiz clearly didn't have the ability on how to finish a fighter. That was his gift-edged opportunity, which he couldn't do. So Wilder later on capitalizing on a very tired Ortiz, you could see his hands dropping a little bit. He wasn't so conscious with that left hand back up to the chin. And Wilder, clever to him, he actually created that distance around that counter right hand. He actually leant back to create the distance up against the ropes, which caused the problems. And then, his wild style that we talk about and, Scorsese has talked about comes in with some very, very reckless type of punches. Are they intentional or not? I've seen traces of them in the Eric Molina fight in the past. So you have to wonder, is it an aberration? Is it an intentional tactic? Or is it just him, exemplifying his killer instinct and trying to, take out an opponent? But nevertheless,
I think it's the latter because he gets like that anytime he gets an opponent hurt.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I mean, even if a fighter, we saw it in the Eubank and the Groves fight, Mike. If a fighter is illegally ducking below the waistline, hit him at the back of the head. I don't care. He shouldn't be ducking that low. That is, that is not allowed. So if a blow is going to land, then no doubt he's going to land at the back of the head. But some of the forearms was when Luis was upright. So some dangerous shots there, but I wasn't even really happy with the stoppage as well. I thought Ortiz could have got up. I feel we could have continued, but whether he would have won the fight, I'm not sure. But Wilder was expected to do that, Mike. Ortiz, he wasn't even remotely within the odds, a 7-4. Wilder gets that victory, and I guess the promoters can start plotting for that mega super fight, which set sail over 3 years ago.
And quickly on Uzcategui and Dirrell, if you saw it.
Yeah, I saw brief element of the fight, Mike. Uzcategui, gets his redemption. Too many of these. I'm sorry to say, Mike, that we've seen a lot of these PBC clock malfunctions and some very shady tactics to protect some of their fighters. That disqualification in the first fight was an absolute travesty. The sequence was clearly before whatever bell there was. So, Dirrell got a reprieve. Credit to him, he actually rematched. Uzcategui I think he was decent. He was just playing with his food round after round. He just gave him a beat down, Mike. Showed some good levels of skills. Showed he had a good educated left hand as well. Later on, actually, not showing it initially. Couldn't miss with that right hand. Dirrell, he was shot a long time ago, Mike. People speak about his talent for so long, but has it really been there? I haven't seen much evidence of it throughout his career. Clearly doesn't really have the dog of his brother. I think he was just looking to check out. I was watching the fight with no commentary. I don't know what the hell was happening in that corner with Virgil Hunter. I couldn't see any cohesion. He was just turning his head. I don't know what words were exchanged, but I don't know whether you guys can fill me on that, but looked like he just seemed completely disinterested. Uzcategui, gets his redemption, gets that stoppage victory. Very good fighter. I think he can clearly mix it with any of the other guys in the division.
Let's move on and talk about the HBO card because once again, Showtime and HBO were simultaneous bouts happening, competing. Just talked about the Showtime fights on HBO. You had Sergey Kovalev fighting Igor, Mikhalkin. The co-main event was Dmitry Bivol, Sullivan, Barrera. I'll just add in quickly before any of you guys can comment. Kovalev, Mikhalkin, he did what he had to do against the fighter he was better than. I still have questions on whether he's quote unquote back. He hasn't been in the ring with a tough guy to show that. Bivol, solid performance, very solid performance against Barrera. Barrera's a tough nut. a top quality contender. I'm not gonna say he's a plus fighter, but he's there. Like I said, he's solid. And Bivol slowly broke him down. I like the jab that he used. He showed to me he showed he's more than just an offensive juggernaut. I like the way he touched the body of Barrera every now and then. Didn't allow Barrera to get off and become effective with the punches as he's used to being effective with in past fights. And yeah, he ended the show in the 12th round. Personally, I think Bivol, he's right up there, can compete with any of the top light heavyweights in the world. Let's just hope I want him to talk like he fights. He fights a very good game, but but at the same time, I don't see him exuding complete confidence in himself and his ability and having trust in his ability, because when he's often asked about how he will fare if he wants to fight some of the top guys, there seems to be a bit of hesitancy there. I'll open up to Mike, to everyone else here who wants to talk, and give your commentary on Kovalev, his stoppage win, as well as Dmitry Bivol and his stoppage win. And could we see a Kovalev Bivol fight later on in 2018 or even early 2019?
They said June. They fighting on the same card, but not against each other. So maybe late 2018, early 19, like you said. Kovalev, I would say I don't have to question he's back. I always had to question, was he ever there? I was one of the only ones that ever questioned him, and now you see he's waiting around. Like the same people that didn't want Tank Davis to wait around with a title while he was just starting is fine with Kovalev waiting around while he has a title and he's supposed to have been on your pound for pound list before. Like, but I had to drop on Kovalev long ago. So this fight right here, stay busy, got it done. He got hit a few times with the southpaw. Most interesting thing about the fight was after the fight that he says he's not ready to fight southpaws. And yeah, okay. I had to drop on that, Cove. But anyways, the Bivol Barrera, like I said, he is an offensive juggernaut. He has so many. He got great footwork to go with it, and he can slip his head, come back. 3 or 4 combinations that all come from his feet. They all start at the feet. Everything with him is feet up. Very good balance, even though he does that, which is what, man, like the 175-pound version of Pacquiao is what I'm seeing. Don't know about all his size and dimensions. I didn't see like his reach or his arm length or nothing, but I want to see that. I'm interested in that. And I mean, I don't think Barrera is as good as people try to make. He's solid, but definitely getting the stoppage was a good look. And like I said, Barrera, he bowed down to the Superman Stevenson curse, man. He actually bowed down, actually accepted it and accepted the bullshit he was doing. And, you know, here you go. Take it. You know what I mean? Bivol, new man in the division. Him, Kovalev, HBO. That's the way we going. How long do we wait is the question.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I'm going to open up the discussion to anybody else. Please comment on Kovalev's win as well as Bivol's stoppage win.
This wasn't easy. This was easy for Kovalev. Igor didn't have much power, and it showed. It just became a beating in many ways. Both fights became beatings in a way. But obviously, Kovalev was more bloody because Igor had a nasty, nasty cut under his right eye. Eventually stopped the fight. That was business as usual for Kovalev. Bivol is the one that's came out and impressed, because you mentioned the talking, Mike. Most of the statements that I heard from him, even as he was given the WBA title, was, "I'm not ready. I'm not ready to be a champion yet." Well, he looks like he's ready to be a champion now, because he took somebody that is as skilled as Sullivan Barrera and pretty much turned him into a piñata for 12 rounds. Because even as Sullivan Barrera was trying to counter, Bivol moved to get out the way. Bivol landed the better combinations. And Bivol remained calm throughout the fight. It took him to 12 rounds, but he eventually got the job done with a straight right. That's going to be very, very impressive. Now, probably the build up to these guys is going to be like one summer card, each guys not facing each other, and then probably in the fall, likely facing each other. So that opens up pretty decent avenues coming off light heavyweight because, well, let's face it, Artem Biedaviv has not signed with Top Rank. So there's a path for him to face Alexander Vostok, which would be a first among Edgar Slima's clients to face each other. And remember, we still have Stevenson Jack coming up pretty soon. So light heavyweight division is there for the taking. It's pretty open. And Bivol pretty much staked his claim to be at the top.
Your thoughts, Gus?
The last leg of my accumulator was resting on Bivol to get a knockout. So when the fight was in the 12th round, Mike, I was getting worried. I was just hitting those whiskeys like a madman. But fortunately, he delivered, and it was an excellent performance. I mean, I agree with Scorsese that I've seen a lot of Barrera, Mike. I didn't see anything special there. A reckless fighter. I don't think he was fundamentally as good as what everybody says. But Bivol, conversely, is technically and fundamentally. He might not be the most biggestly or the most physically imposing 175-pound fighter, but he's very decent both at long, short, mid-range, and even inside the pocket. He'll retaliate. If he's actually hit with a punch, he'll come back with three. Likes the way he steps out with that left hand. Even throw in a fadeaway jab, come back with that straight right hand. But he'll even vary the right hand, the length, even the power as well. Put in some touch shots. Very good fighter. I think he's a very cerebral fighter. You spoke about his lack of fight talk, but I think it's just his. If you listen to his interviews, Mike, I think it's just his upbringing. There's a degree of humility, humbleness, especially with fighters from Central Asia, Eastern Europe, etc. I don't think they're prodigious talkers, Mike. I have a bit of knowledge of that region. I've worked for the institutions with a hell of a lot of Russians, fighters, people from Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. It's not really their demeanor, Mike. But he doesn't seem to think that he switches that killer instinct on when he's in the ring. But his agenda, I don't know. They can't really wait around with him, Mike. He is in his 30s as well. He had a protracted amateur career, so I think he's very keen on fighting the best. I think if the opportunities arise, he'll try and unify. But it's all down to Klimas, who manages a lot of these fighters at 175. What does he want to do? Does he want to just carry on milking on all of them, winning individual titles within the division, or is he keen on unifying? It's all going to come down to the managers and the handlers, because the fights can be made quite easily. A lot of these, Kovalev and Bivol, HBO, so that fight can be made very easily. I don't see any stumbling blocks there. But Derbiev, I don't know whether he's with Top Rank officially or not. But if Top Rank are exclusively ESPN, then potentially that fight might be a little bit problematic. And Jack Stevenson, whoever prevails from that, that's going to be a potential of a stumbling block as well. So hopefully, at least we can get Bivol and Kovalev. Kovalev, he knew this guy from Siberia very well. I think they were both part of this Russian amateur boxing program. Good friends. I think you can go into the ring with that confidence, Mike, that you're not really going to be hurt, so you're relatively relaxed. He's trying to reinvigorate his confidence, etc. So he can. I saw a guy who was just having fun. He can gamble. Yes, he was getting hit, but I think he wasn't worried about what was coming back. Mikhalkin was fundamentally reasonably not bad. Didn't really have a good defense. I think he was just taking too many punches. on the face. Had a very good chin though, but his face was getting busted up. Kovalev looked all right. I don't think we can take too much out of that performance, Mike. It was just to keep busy against a guy who you knew he was going to win 100%. So we'll see what happens.
I'm gonna skip a bit Kell Brook and his comeback fight against Sergey Rabchenko. I mean, he did what he had to do. He stopped him in 2. He looked strong. He looked pretty good at the weight from a physical standpoint. We will see what he does at junior middleweight and see if he can land a title shot. I want to move on. Last week we talked a lot about the weigh-in situation with Luis Nery and Shinsuke Yamanaka, the rematch. The fight actually took place hours after recording of the live show. Nery, he destroyed Yamanaka in 2. I'm going to you, Gus, first, because during the first fight, I did a live post-fight show early morning my time, immediately following the fights. You know these fighters extensively, Nery, Yamanaka. I want, first of all, your thoughts on the unprofessionalism of Nery with the weigh-in. The fact that was rude what he did to Yamanaka, and the subsequent stuff that has happened afterwards. The WBC suspending him indefinitely, pending a hearing. The JBC banning Nery from fighting in the country for a year. The backlash against Nery afterwards, the retirement subsequently of Yamanaka. Your thoughts on all of that?
Mike, it was just the entire first fight and second fight was just a fiasco when you really investigate what exactly the sanctioning bodies try to do. Nery failing the test before the fight, yet they allowed him to continue. It was only because the results were leaked. Otherwise, who knows, they would have even potentially have covered it up, Mike. So Yamanaka, when he's trying to become the outright record holder of the most defenses, and he is denied in that sense, it is that is, what can you say? I mean, it always seems to happen with a lot of these fighters who are trying to go for records. They all seem to be getting beat by juiced up fighters. So yeah, it was a massive disappointment, Mike. And Luis, I've been watching this guy for a very, very long time. Watching a lot of Mexican fighters, and I had high hopes and aspirations of a young man who had a lot of physical gifts about him, a savage fighter. But those sort of fighters tend to appeal. And the way the WBC, the way this whole thing has been arbitrated, Mike, is an absolute disgrace, because I've really been looking into concentration levels, looking into sort of livestock, both in Mexico, and we touch on about Canelo, America and Europe with livestock, exactly what they've been using, and the contaminated drug story is an absolute load of rubbish, Mike. I can effectively tell you that. Even the levels, when you're talking about picograms per milliliters, a lot of people don't even understand what sort of conversion rates are even used in these tests, and whether the human body actually produces any of these stimulants. They have absolutely no idea whatsoever. But going into this second fight, Mike, it wasn't even an immediate rematch, which seemed absolutely ludicrous as well. They allow Luis to have a voluntary against Arthur Villanueva, and then call a rematch, and then Luis coming in as a super bantamweight. What was he, 123? Got down to 121, and they were all cheering him. Looked absolutely like death row on. Standing there with towels over his head whatsoever. They imposed a rehydration clause on him. initially. I don't think he could have been more than 126 or 128.
128. He came in at 127, but 8 p.m. of the fight, he was 132.
Yeah. So he carried that. No, you carry the effects of Zil Patrol, Mike. He's obviously a much bigger natural guy, and it's obviously allowing him to burn fat just as quickly, and at the same time stimulate his oxygen transportation to his body. But a lot of these athletes, Mike, they tend to layer these substances, so they'll be on anabolics as well, and then they'll just add that Zilpatrol to stimulate the body's respiratory, the metabolism as well. So it's all a carefully calibrated, structured plan that they do. They know exactly when to cycle off. They know when the WBC is going to give them a ring to say that, look, your testing is going to commence whatsoever. So it's all a collusion between the sanctioning bodies and the fighters, Mike. I have absolutely no doubt. I've learned very, very quickly that, I think 90% of all fighters are juiced up, Mike. That is my working theory.
90%?
Yeah, 90%. I can look in weigh-in pictures, Mike. I can see fighters. I can look at their body shapes and, their trapezius muscles whatsoever. You can sometimes even see you can see the traction marks around their navel as well, Mike, to see guys who have been injecting, IVs as well. So the weigh-in pictures, they tell it all, Mike. 90%, Mike. I definitely go with that theory. If you understand, drug testing organizations as well, VADA, for example, their limitations on testing, which is why a lot of cyclists have been using laboratories in Germany, because they go well in advance of what VADA can do in any of their laboratories. So, and we know USADA, Mike. USADA have never historically used carbon isotope drug testing. So a lot of fighters were specifically using USADA, and that was getting heavily criticized by the Germans, the Russians, the Japanese, the English. And we know USADA, Mike, they're under no legal mandate to submit comprehensive drug testing to any state athletic commission. They have no legal mandate to do so. Now, full comprehensive testing can only be sanctioned if it's been subpoenaed by the federal government, the FBI. That is, if a lawsuit, has been invoked, and how many of them have happened. So they're all fundamentally flawed, Mike. This is all, the sport is just ravaged with corruption throughout.
Indeed, that's interesting observation there, Gus. I go to you. Who is it? I think Bo has joined us, right? Bo, Bo from Truth and Facts has joined us. I'll meet you, Mike, brother. We're talking Nery Yamanaka, that rematch. But first, I want to go back, get your thoughts on Wilder and Ortiz, and then you can come forward and give your thoughts on that entire fiasco that was the Nery Yamanaka rematch.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, all right, then. I'm driving, so if I go in and out, let me know.
Okay, cool.
All right. The Luis Ortiz, Deontay Wilder fight, it's funny because every time we ask Deontay Wilder to do something and he does it, there's always a complaint afterwards. There's always but see, and it's shut up, niggas. I'm tired of it. I really am, man. Boxing is starting to turn into, this is the reason why we have fighters that always have excuses, because we got fans that always want to make excuses. So if you got fans making excuses, I never remember Marvin Hagler having an excuse. I never remember Tommy Hearns, these guys having excuses. So, but it was what boxing needed. Wilder needed an exciting fight. He needed a reason for people to say, yo, I'm going to watch this dude again. He needed a reason for even those people that hate him and don't like him to be like, you know what, I don't like him. But man, if this dude don't put people on their butt. That's what he needed. I think that if you look at the fight in the whole scope of things, and I've said this before, the one thing about boxing, the anomaly has always been Floyd and Manny. But Floyd and Manny flourishing has always only benefited Floyd and Manny. I've said this 100 times. When the heavyweight division is flourishing and have a buzz, then the rest of boxing has a buzz. So this is what boxing needed. It was a man. You can't ask for a better dramatic fight. It was 2018's version of Klitschko versus Anthony Joshua. So props to Deontay Wilder. Props to Luis Ortiz. And man, I actually hope that that they just keep on doing this. Deontay has flaws. We know this, right? But that right hand of his and that undying determination, belief in himself
Yes.
is what carries Deontay time and time. I don't care. Like, he knows he's not the most technically sound. He knows he's not the most skillful guy, but he believes in himself to a fault. You will never deter Deontay Wilder. You will never make this dude think that no one can beat him. And honestly speaking, that's how champions are supposed to be. They are supposed to be like, I don't care what my flaws are. You can't beat me. So props to him for that, man. And Luis Ortiz, man, what can you say, man? He came in, gave a good effort. I think if you look at it, Luis Ortiz could probably beat. There's a lot of heavyweights that Luis Ortiz can still, in my opinion, he can still beat that night. He just got met with that right hand because he was winning the fight. He just got met with that right hand, and as we saw, nobody can stand up to it. And like I said, man, it's what boxing needed because now everybody's looking forward to Joseph Parker versus Anthony Joshua fight that's coming up later on in March. So the whole month is being buzzed because of the heavyweight division, which is trickling down to the rest of boxing. And as far as Yamanaka and Nery, I like how Yamanaka gave Nery that look at the end of that fight,
Man,
like, yeah,
look,
you.
bro, look. At the end of the fight, you talk about when Nery came to like give him a hug, and he gave him a look like this mother. Yeah, that look.
Yeah, he gave him that look. He gave him that look like, yeah, motherfucker, you lucky. they because they get these gloves off me, goddamn it. I'm gonna use my feet and everything else up in here, man. I give Yamanaka a lot of credit. He was the older veteran, a long streak without losing fights. Been a champion for a long time. So I give him credit for even taking the rematch because he could have been like, no, I don't want to do it. But he took the rematch, and I give him all the credit in the world. I'm highly and extremely. Luis Nery is going to have to do a hell of a lot to regain my, not so much as my belief in him, but my support for him. Like, if he fights, I'll talk about his fights. But I can't support Luis Nery. You failed the drug test, okay? You want to say tainted meat. That we don't get in there with Canelo, but that kills me because I think you guys should know better by now. But he came in 5 pounds overweight. 5 pounds overweight. That is so the most unprofessional. I mean, when you was taking, when you popped for the illegal substance, you came in on weight. Now you're not taking it. You came in overweight. So there's a dark cloud over him. There's a dark cloud over this victory with Nery. And like I said, he's gonna have to do a lot, man, to regain my faith in him. He's gonna have to probably fight a top guy like a Zolani Tate. He's gonna have to fight a top guy and make weight, be clean, and beat them convincingly for him to get my support, because that's just so unprofessional to come in 5 pounds. I mean, he didn't even care. And then the blame going around on his nutritionist, well, I thought our diet was right and all that. You guys ever heard of a thing called a scale? You guys ever heard of a thing? You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man, stop with these excuses. Like, they're killing me, man, and they really is. And it just, Nery is a good fighter, and he is a beast, but he's going to have that dark cloud over him, and it's a shame. And, Yamanaka lost to what you really can't even say he lost to a better fighter, given the circumstances, with him coming in overweight and failing the drug test. So, like I said, he's going to have to do a hell of a lot to regain my support for him.
Quickly, your thoughts on all this, Daniel?
Oh man, where to begin? Where to begin? Let's. You have to do You have to act in an extremely stupid manner for the Mexican television broadcast to be pissed at the Mexican.
Right.
And they were pissed at him. The video's up on YouTube. Like they literally like, okay, and Mayor Bailing gets his help, but what are you doing? This is the second time this has happened. What the hell is going on?
They shamed him more than they shamed Chavez Jr. Now that's saying something.
Yeah. And granted, yeah, at the fight, then they started getting into the whole homerism angle, but it's just a bad way all around. Now, I've said this, like I said, I've said this on various platforms, so I'm going to say it again. I think he made a mistake taking that little homecoming fight in Tijuana. He should have just kept on, done a long camp, and maybe he would have made the weight then. But I think that fight stopped his training and ultimately led to this whole series of events where at the weigh-in, he looked worse than Skeletor Rios. We've seen Skeletor Rios before. He looked even worse. Like you saw the video, Mike. He couldn't even get the Gatorade they're trying to give him in his mouth.
Right.
And then to come back in, barely make the morning of weigh-in, and then essentially just be a junior lightweight or a lightweight and just mow down Yamanaka like that. That's pretty obscene. Now, the WBC suspension is indefinite, pending a hearing, which means he probably has to beg for them to reinstate him. Then the JBC, he may not have to worry about that because if he naturally goes up to like things like 122, 126, he's set into territories where he doesn't have to fly to Japan to get titles.
JBC, Japanese Boxing Commission, for those who don't know.
Mm-hmm. But I legitimately feel bad for Yamanaka. Yeah, he didn't deserve to go out the way he did. To essentially be beaten down by a guy who the first time he beat you, he popped for something. And then the second time he beat you, he didn't make the weight the day before. That look has some mean intentions when Nery was hugging him. Nery shouldn't have hugged him. And in many ways, Nery should have done what a lot of people do in Japan when they beg for forgiveness. You bow down to them and you beg for forgiveness. He didn't do that. He instead came in, he said he's gonna win the belt again. It was just an embarrassment all around.
Indeed. Let's move on to some news here. I'm going to you, Gus, on this one. In discussing Nery and Yamanaka, you went to quite an extensive detail about the issues of drugs. I want to connect that to the first news story. Then there's the news that broke a couple of days ago that Canelo Alvarez tested positive for clenbuterol. Ironically enough, the same thing that Nery tested positive for after his first fight with Yamanaka. I want you to try to make a connection between your discussion about Nery and drugs to the news that broke about Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah, Nery's was actually a Zilpatrol.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for correcting me. My apologies.
Yeah. Canelo's tested positive for clenbuterol, Mike. Wow, it's just been nice to see the reaction of all of these little canalitos, Mike, who are just trying to extricate Canelo from any blame, any exoneration. But Mike, when we talk about clenbuterol, Mike, if Canelo was opening a present on Christmas Day, he's not hoping for a diamond encrusted Rolex. What he really wants is a fresh new batch of clenbuterol, because that stuff is absolutely gold dust. It is the most perfectly calibrated drug for all of his deficiencies and everything he's been doing in the sport. Now, the drug has been around. It's not a new drug. It's been around for about 40 years. And what people have got to realize is that clenbuterol is not something that is generated in the body naturally, like, say, for example, testosterone. So there are no thresholds. If it's in your system, Mike, it's been there. It's there for a specific reason, and athletes are liable for that. So it doesn't matter whether you have, 0.8 nanogram per milliliter, or you have, 10 milligrams. It is still a positive test. So resorting to this contamination meat story, which we've heard over and over, is ridiculous. Athletes, why on earth are they using sort of free-range livestock, especially a multi-millionaire, Mike? It is, it's ridiculous. Clenbuterol, we know it. We know Canelo has had, stamina issues, so the drug is specifically designed to stimulate breathing. It basically boosts your oxygen sort of transportation specifically for stamina, and it also burns fat at a much higher metabolic rate than pretty much any other drug. So Canelo, we know, has been fluctuating between weights, getting down to 154, looking like dead on the scales, and then rehydrating back up. So I have absolutely no doubt, Mike, that Canelo has been on HGH, human growth hormones. You've only got to look at his body mass, the way it's expanding. His head is even expanding as well. And they just layer it up with clenbuterol and other substances, Mike. These guys get professional chemists to do it. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever. He was 0.8 of a nanogram per milliliter on the 17th of February. 3 days later, it went down to 0.08 nanogram per milliliter. So it looks like, clenbuterol does exit the body relatively quickly. And from, the research I've been doing, speaking with some scientists, for example, exactly, how it's, administered. And you've just got to look at evidence of other cases of clenbuterol, Mike, involving, say, cyclists. Look at the Alberto Contador story of the Tour de France, exactly what he had in his system. He resorted to the same excuse as well. His amounts, sometimes 40% less. And these guys still receive 2-year bans, Mike. I think one of the only athletes who managed to get a bit of a leeway was an Olympic swimmer. I think it was an American swimmer. I can't remember her name now. Jessica something. Jessica Hardy. She had a 2-year ban for clenbuterol. She got it down to a year because she was able to evidence that it was contained in some supplements that she was taking. So I think she was very fortunate still, because the protocols are there. They're distributed to every single state athletic commission. It's down to all of them. They know that there is no tolerance, or there shouldn't be any tolerance with them. But Mike, you've got to look at other regions as well now. This whole livestock issue now. If we look at Europe, for example, now under the Common Agricultural Policy, one of the most aggressive policies in which the European Union had set up to prevent, obviously, food shortages like during the Second World War. So what happened, every single country, all of the farmers began to expand aggressively, shifting all of their hedgerows into arable land for growth. They were injecting livestock with pig genes, with God knows what other substances. Meat has just been, they've conducted comprehensive testing just on the size of these animals as well, Mike. and they can very easily differentiate, what has been injected to increase the size, so they can obviously maximize their profit when they're obviously slaughtering the meat and selling it on the open market for it. And they were getting export restitutions to obviously export the meat across Europe whatsoever. So, and then you've just got to look at, what percentage of athletes within Europe, within those countries that had all of these, the subsidies and the export restitutions, how many of them were found guilty of clenbuterol. And same with America as well, Mike, they were using some of a drug, written it down, but I forgot the name. But you've just got to look at the volume. You've just got to look at the percentages as well. And it's been hardly any, a tolerance level of less than, 0.006% in Europe, for example, of athletes, whether it's Tour de France, football, any of them that have been caught with that sort of substance, that have used that story of contaminated meat, Mike. It's just an absolute fallacy. Canelo was obviously trying to cycle down. They caught him at a time when he was actually cycling down. Absolutely no surprise that the sanctioning bodies have done absolutely nothing. They're as corrupt as they come. They should all be dissolved. There's too much money in the fight, Mike. Golovkin's going to not say anything. He's looking to cash out very quickly. The pay-per-views are probably going to still do about, 1.5, 2 million whatsoever. So, absolutely no surprise, Mike. But it's been nice just to see the damage control from Golden Boy and all the rest of these butthurt canalitos, who are just trying to, laugh it off and give examples of the Luis Nery, etc. But doesn't surprise me in any shape or form, Mike.
Quite an extensive breakdown analysis, both scientific and historical, of the situation of drugs and the history of that. And putting it vis-a-vis this fight. Go ahead, continue on, Gus, quickly.
No, I said, sorry, it was a little bit long, but that's me, man. That's corruption in boxing. This is my thing, man.
No problem. So quite an extensive discussion there. Talk from Gus. I'm going to you, Bo. Your reaction to this, given the history that Gus alluded to and discussed, you would think that Team Canelo, would be on their P's and Q's in terms of this. Buy organic, train outside Mexico. Either way, they should have done their due diligence so this would not happen. And the fact that it did, to Gus's points, leaves Team Canelo suspect for sure.
No, it leaves Team Canelo more than just suspect. Here's the thing, Mike, and this is something I want to point out to everybody. This was the most calculated, precise, unified display of either a cover-up or a whole team effort for damage control. Julio Solomon did not tweet in the middle of the fucking night like he did when it was Luis Ortiz. They all of a sudden had the exact amount that he, found in his system. They laid it all out there. They gave you examples of how other fighters, when they've tested the levels that Canelo tested for, is consistent with their readings and go along with and how that their readings was that of someone if they eat contaminated meat. I mean, they had everything. This was the full court press for covering up our fuck up.
It's like excuse me, both for interrupting. It's like they knew ahead of time and mapped out a plan and strategy to react.
They did. If you look at the WBA and the WBC's announcements, if you look at, like I said, if you look at the reports that have been coming out, how people are saying, well, it's not a PED, it's a banned substance. Kiss my black ass. Illegal is illegal.
They're trying to make a distinction without much of a difference.
Yeah.
People don't insult folks' intelligence like that.
That's like saying I didn't rob the bank. I just drove the getaway car.
Right.
You know, so if you look at everything behind this, and no pun intended, it is truly corruption in boxing. Like Gus' title is always. This was the epitome of let's get out in front of this. Let's have everything put together. Let's do a full court press and let's be unified in every part of our story. So by the time the fight comes, no one will be focused on this. They'll be more focused on the fight. And then at the end of the day, to be honest with you, Mike, they're absolutely right in this aspect. When the fight comes, it will only be tainted and question marks about Canelo because of the elaborate history they gave about it being a banned substance, the elaborate history they gave about several fighters who have tested for the same thing, being contaminated meat. So if however the fight turns out, there'll be talks more about the performance and the fight itself than there will be about the so-called PED, because you'll have so much pushback from people who may like Canelo, or pushback from people who don't like Gennady Golovkin, who'll be like, well, it's just a banned substance, and he tested clean from there on afterwards. So he had 60 days before the fight, and he tested clean there on afterwards, so it wasn't still in his system. Yada yada yada. This was a complete team effort. This was a complete downer as far as I'm concerned, because Canelo, it's proven that there's so much money involved in this. So much money involved in this. So much so much built around this. Like, this fight is supposed to save boxing, as they want to say it. Okay, so it's so much on this. This is the big mega fight of the year, and they don't want to see it crash and burn. And how they're going about it, how they're doing it compared to other fighters. The WBA kicked Luis Ortiz out of their rankings. Like we said, they actually waited to after the fight to tell us about Luis Nery testing positive. I mean, it's so much wrong here that it's just unbelievable that the amount of continued support and going forward is being taken there. And then I just want to touch on one more thing, and I agree with Gus. Listen, this is Gennady Golovkin's big payday. So his team is going to agree to not so much as ragging on Canelo, but it's going to be interesting what they do after the fight if Golovkin loses, what they say afterwards. Okay, but there's so much money riding on this. They're not going to say anything because this is going to be their biggest payday also. So in short, Mike, the WBC should be ashamed of themselves. The WBA should be ashamed of themselves. And I'm going to say this one more time. And I do agree with Gus in this aspect of the amount that Canelo tested with could be him when he was cycling off of it. And that's the amount he tested with. But his team should have known better. If you know that there's contaminated meat, your team should have known better. They should have been like, listen, we're going to fly in our own stuff because we don't want to have these issues and problems. And I truly believe that they had this ready just in case he tested positive, whether it be the meat was contaminated or whether he was cycling, because this was just so well put together. This isn't something you put together overnight. This was put together like somebody sat down and had planned this days in advance.
PR like a mother.
And his team should have known better. And that's I don't care what anybody say to me. I'm giving them the hairy eyeball, because if you're telling me there's an elaborate history of tainted meat, and I travel the country. Okay. Now I'm not gonna sit up here and make it seem like that I take the type of drug test that these guys take. I don't, but I do have to take a drug test, period. And I travel the country and I eat the food in these other countries and all of that. And man, I haven't gone through none of these extremes that these guys are talking about and feeling body. I haven't gone through that, and I exercise and work out too. And I haven't gone through any of that. So, I mean, it's a shame. And I can't express how his team just should have known better. This could have been avoided. But if it moving forward, Canelo is always going to have this dark cloud over him because you've had all these clean tests before. You you had training camps in Mexico before, never had this problem. Why now? Why now? So I'm curious to see if they're even going to test. Like, I haven't heard if they're even going to test the B sample. I don't even know if they, because I haven't heard that they're going to test the B sample. They're just acting like, oh, this is consistent with that. So whatever, let's keep going. They're not even trying to test the B sample to see, you know what I'm saying? Was there a difference in elevation from A to B? They're not even doing that. They're just like, oh, it is what it is. Let's keep going. Let's, now that that's out, okay, let's push it under the rug. But the fight's going to take place in May. It's bullshit. Total complete bullshit.
CEO Inspiracy. Basically, that's what you're hearing from Bo and Gus, and I can't say that I necessarily disagree with them because, yeah, something is awry here. I'll go to Daniel quickly. Your thoughts on all this with Canelo and the positive test?
That letter from Golden Boy just pretty much pasted and copied. All you had to do was replace Francisco Vargas with Canelo Alvarez. So first, they already had a template for talking about this whole situation. Now, I'm not gonna say that I don't necessarily disagree with either Gus or Bo as far as putting my tinfoil hat on and saying that this is all conspiracy and corruption, because unfortunately we have seen too much of it to deny it. I give somebody the benefit of that if they showed enough before, and this happens now. If you had it done, if you had it tested before and you didn't pop, I give you the benefit of the doubt. However, I'm going to be as vicious and I'm going to be as blunt to you as I was when Luis Ortiz's team fucked up when it came to their situation. And there's involved paperwork. And stand true that if you have an issue where it's reported in your country that 1 out of every 4 of your beef farms still uses this substance, even though it's technically illegal in Mexico now. If players and athletes from other leagues like the NFL have to warn them about eating meat just because they may have this, and therefore you might pop for something in the drug tests, you should have known better. You should have, like Bo said, granted, it might cost a pretty penny, but import meat from the U.S. to come in. Or maybe, not actually have your camp be in Mexico. We don't know how many times our good colleague Gail Farcadell has mentioned that Canelo essentially pretty much lives in San Diego these days. So why not just have the camp there? Now you have to go through this nice little show and dance of, okay, you told everybody you're supposed to. You told Golovkin. You told the Nevada State Athletic Commission. You said, okay, I'll do more testing. I'll move the camp to the U.S. Unfortunately, this is the bad thing about it when it comes down to it. Anytime you pop, no matter what, you're automatically going to be looked at as dirty for pretty much the rest of your career. It doesn't matter what sport. It happens. The stigma will always be attached to you. Or it can even be attached to you even when people suspect it. To this day, people still argue whether or not Floyd and Manny were juicing. So, yeah, this is going to be bad as far as PR for Canelo. Anytime that if he wins this fight, immediate asterisk. Oh, you were on something. If he loses, oh, they caught you with doing something. You weren't as good as you were before. So everything is bad when it comes down to it. They've done everything that they could damage control-wise. Now, when it comes to the WBC and WBA, I'm not surprised by what the WBC and WBA did, particularly the WBC. It's the main Mexican sanctioning body. The WBA, they worded it nicely, said, look, we believe Canelo's innocent, and we're going to back up the WBC because they've dealt with this more. Either way, like, you're not going to endanger the money in this fight. You're not. There's too much money riding for Golovkin, too much money riding for Tom Loeffler because he kind of needs it. Because he's starting his new promotional company, 360 Promotions. So he needs to make sure that money is scared off the ground. HBO needs the money. And we know Canelo's people need the money. So there's too much money for this to be stopped. But there's going to be a black cloud on this, unfortunately. And whether Canelo likes it or not, that stink is going to follow him for pretty much the rest of his career. Because it comes at the point where it's a rematch of the fight that could define your legacy post-Floyd. And it's a rematch where a lot of people thought you lost. So, like I said, I'm not going to go full-blown conspiracy, but yeah, Chepo, everyone in the team fucked up. They're doing their best to damage control it. And ultimately, like I said, this is going to be a stain on Canelo's career moving forward, whether he likes it or not.
There's no conspiracy. I think it's clearly fact. Another thing I will say, Mike, is that Luis Ortiz was prepared to give a hair sample, and I think Canelo should do exactly the same thing. Hair drug testing, something that VADA does not incorporate. And let's look at the reasons why now. Hair drug testing can detect abstinence for up to 12 months. So it can effectively tell you the pattern of when clenbuterol entered the system, even up to as much as 12 months ago. So I think it is a very good indication, but VADA intentionally omits it the same way USADA intentionally omits carbon isotope drug testing, which is one of the most sensitive drug testing there is on the planet. So you just have to think, why do these organizations have limitations, deficiencies in their standard operating working protocols and their legal mandates? It's because, as I've said many times, it is a process of elimination to allow the athletes, allow the boxers, who the sanctioning bodies, the promoters, etc., who they want to juice, they can just carry on juicing, which they have been juicing for decades, and to stop those who they clearly don't want in the equation to be obviously found guilty and then eliminated from the equation. So the whole model might, a wise man once said, where there is doubt, there is no doubt. And I have absolutely no doubt. There is no conspiracy. The facts are all there. You just got to look at the evidence. You've got to, look at the evidence coming from scientists. You've got to look at, you've got to look at their training regimes. You've got to, to me, Mike, if you're astute enough, you can put it all together. It's just clear as day, Mike.
Two realities here before we move on to other news. The test itself, the positive test, and the spin job, none of it passes the smell test. That's sad reality number one. The second sad reality, in spite of how much we've opined over this news, over this positive test and the ramifications of it, and kind of historical and medical evidence to suggest that something is really, really funky here. In spite of all that, the fight is going to happen because of money. Dinero, it talks. In all of that, what we've said here, in spite of how legitimate and how concrete and how factual it is, the sad thing is not going to mean a damn thing come May 5th, because it's too much money invested. It's too much on the line for the BC, the BA, Golden Boy, and HBO. and that's the ugly truth, unfortunately. That's the ugly truth. And your handle, Gus. That's what makes this part corruption in boxing, unfortunately. With that being said, let's move on to some other news here. I want to give a shout out to Asian Boxing on Twitter. If you want to check out, look for any kind of news boxing wise on the continent of Asia, Japan, Thailand, Korea. Um, very good site. A lot of accurate and very good info. Monday night, I got the story from him, and that is Naoya Inoue, whose name came up a couple of weeks ago in reaction to the SSR Estrada fight, and whether there should be kind of side eye over Inoue because he's moving up. Rumors of this fight happening. The fight is indeed happening, as Inoue will fight Jamie McDonnell May 25th. In Tokyo. I'll go to you first, Bo. Your thoughts on this news? Do you like the fight? Do you like the fact that Inoue has decided to indeed move up to bantamweight? Your thoughts?
I definitely like the fight. He's going up. He's fighting Jamie. My only question is Jamie being able to make the weight and be comfortable. He looked like he was starting to get a little bit too big for that, but I think because of this fight and the money with this fight, that they was willing to give it another try. I mean, they was willing to, give it a try for him to make the weight. So yeah, I like the fight. It's a good fight. The only thing is, I'm hoping I don't. I'm hoping that Naoya Inoue is not leaving the division. Maybe he's just going up to climb to grab a belt. I'm hoping he still tries to fight at the other division, because there's a lot of good fights at that division for him. A lot of good fights I would like to see him fight. But just from a fan standpoint, and maybe even as a promoter, to building his resume and try to add more stock to him, is let's go up in weight, fight Jamie McDonnell, who's undefeated, fight, win another title. So now you'll be a 3-weight division champion. So this adds to your stocks. When you sit at the negotiation table, you have a lot more power. Maybe even try to appeal to maybe UK fans or fans from the other side. So from that aspect, I like it. I just don't want this to be a situation where he leaves the division he's in, because I would love to see him get his hands on Louis Nery and humble the shit out of his ass. I would love to see him do that. So there's just a lot of fights that at that division that he could still make. And what I don't want is, if he goes up, people will say, man, he's ducking all the top talent at this division by going up in a division. So like I said, all in all, I like the fight. I think it's a good move. I just hope he's not leaving the division, because there's still so many good fights for him.
I'm going to you, Gus. Your base is the UK. What's the reaction to this? To the fact that McDonnell is indeed moving up to, is going to stay at 118 and fight Inoue. I too have concerns over Inoue, but I've also heard from a few folks who believe that McDonnell not just has a chance, but will indeed pull off the upset of Inoue. So the reaction to the news, Gus.
Mike, I've not really been too much wide into the reaction. I've been traveling about a little bit. So I can't really speak for what is the general consensus in the UK, because, Jamie McDonnell is not a fighter that is, widely known in the UK. But judging on his recent performances, I don't think it's really much of a threat for Inoue. But if we talk about the overriding issues, Mike, the level of criticism that is certainly apparent to what Inoue's activities have been, jumping between 108 initially, missing out flyweight, jumping to super flyweight, and now jumping up to 118 pounds, having pretty much done nothing at 115, except beating, Omar Figueroa. But, Figueroa was what, into his 45th or something fight. He was a veteran then. So, yeah, Mike, I think there is a certain level of criticism that can be attached. And I get I get a similar sort of feeling when we talk about Kosei Tanaka. Is he doing the same thing, jumping up weight categories, to accumulate belts? But then you got to think about, at least Tanaka fought Angel Acosta, one of the best fighters, I think, in the world, period. I'm very high on this guy, superb knockout puncher. And Tanaka fought him and defeated him. You're talking about a guy who has 100% knockout, and he was coming up. He was in his prime as well, Mike. So you can say at least Tanaka has defeated him, and now he's going up. We know these are extremely young guys, so they're obviously developing strength, developing muscle. They're getting bigger naturally, so they are going to naturally increase their body size. But with Inoue, it is disappointing, Mike, because him and Srisakat, him and Estrada are fights that we're all desperate about. Yes, we're aware of that. He defeated the old guard. Fine. We talk about his contract, but I think that contract is a load of bullshit, Mike. Because look at some of the opponents who he's fought. Antonio Nieves, whatever. This guy was a full-time investment banker, Mike. He was like a part-time boxer. So you're fighting him on HBO in the United Kingdom. That doesn't really correlate to his contract now, does it? So I don't buy that for a minute, Mike. It is disappointing. We're talking about 3 pounds. He can certainly stay at the super flyweight. Yes, we know the big money fight was Roman Gonzalez. He was there for that. Potentially, both of them could have earned as much as 750,000 to $1 million. But when Gonzalez lost, I think Inoue basically said, "That's me done in the division. I'm moving up." So it's disappointing. The 118-pound division. Yeah, it is decent, but you're going to fight McDonnell in Japan for a regular belt, which pretty much means nothing at all. Whether the other fights are going to transpire, Mike, I really don't know. But I think it's a disappointing move. I think he could have definitely stayed at 115 pounds. I think the money was there for those fights. I think HBO would have put up the money as well for those fights. I don't see McDonnell posing much of a problem. He's got length and he's got reach, and he was struggling to make 118. He was talking about moving up to super bantamweight for a long time as well. So if he is drained and Inoue is moving up, then it could be a perfect time for Inoue. I think Hashi Promotions knows that as well. So I fully expect him to knock him out and pick up that totally insignificant belt, Mike.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
Kind of disappointed because, like Bo, I thought there's plenty of fights for him on 115. I do understand the contract situation. I do understand that he said that he was still growing, so you would assume this goes into it. But this has pretty much been the second time where something like this has happened with Inoue, where the division starts getting hot. It's like to be filled with good challengers, and then he moves up. Now, almost different set of characters, with the exception of Guy Estrada. Having 115 popping, and now it looks like he's moving up to 118. I do hope, maybe like Bo, that this is just one thing to get a belt to basically pull a Mikey Garcia in a situation like this, grab a belt and go back down the division. But I wouldn't be surprised if he stays there. And if he stays there, there's one name that he should mention. If and when he beats McDonnell, the only words that should come out of his mouth are Zolani Tete. That's it. That's the only thing that Naoya Inoue should be asked. I'm pretty sure the UK crowd will ask, and that's the only thing he should say. I want to fight Zolani Tete.
Okay, how can I put this? I agree with everybody else here that I wish that Inoue would stay. at 115, and maybe he is because he still technically has a title. He hasn't given it up yet. To Bo's point, it could be a situation he's just going there to, in his mind, thinking that he could win a belt just to say he secured a belt, and hopefully he'll keep the title at 115 and see if he can fight Rung Vasai, or maybe try to go back and try to secure a bout with an Akanyas, who he tried to fight before, but Aram said no. Hopefully they will have a change of heart as time passes. McDonnell, he's a decent fighter, a good scrap. But my problem is, I look at him and the who was the Japanese fighter he fought twice? Help me out, fellas. Kameda. To me, Inoue is faster than Kameda. He's more explosive than Kameda, both hands and feet. And if Kameda can give McDonnell those kind of problems, a McDonnell who's struggling to get down to 118, because after the second fight with Solis, his trainer basically said it's time for him to move to 122. So part of this says to me that he's moving up he's taking this opportunity and go just to Japan because of the handsome payday. Because he's fighting a McDonnell who's struggling to make weight, and an Inoue is faster than a Kameda who gave him problems twice. I'm going to give Inoue an advantage here. Yeah, he's tall. Yeah, he's long. But the problem with McDonnell is he doesn't use his height and his length enough in fights. But yeah, you're right, Daniel. Should he win, there should be pressure put to bear on him that either he contemplates going back down to 15 or he fights Zolani Tete, because that's the biggest fight. We don't know the situation with Nery. His career is in flux. Plus, it's such a black mark in his career. I don't know if he'll get a title shot anytime soon, no matter what sanctioning body. So Tete is the fight for him. Good on his mark, but in the grand scheme of things, I agree with all y'all. It's a level of disappointment there. Last bit of news before we start previewing the fights that's happening. Omar Figueroa out because of supposed quote-unquote shoulder injury. Jessie Vargas in to fight Adrien Broner. I'm just going to open it up for anybody who wants to respond. Your thoughts?
You said Omar Figueroa out and Jessie Vargas in?
Yeah.
I will say this. This will probably be the only positive I say for Adrien Broner is he really literally will fight anybody. So I would definitely give Adrien Broner that. He'll fight anyone. But excuse my language. How fucking crazy is this for Keith Thurman that Jessie Vargas is now fighting Broner? Like, come on. Like, really? Really?
I didn't think about that, I didn't think about that, but yeah, you got a point. Again, sometime Thurman strikes again.
But no, it's like, just how does this look for you that, okay, you didn't fight Vargas, but now Broner's going to fight him? And Broner, like you said, Broner will fight anyone, but Broner's going to fight him. It's surprising. I'm not really surprised given the fact that both Omar Figueroa and Adrien Broner had some issues in the same week, I may add. Okay, they had some legal issues. They're saying it's somebody type of shoulder injury, but I think it's he may have some legal things to take care of. They're just trying to be hush hush about it. But I mean, it's a fight that Jessie Vargas can win too, because the way he fights is sort of one of the things that Adrien Broner has a problem with. One of those guys that come forward and pressures him and comes at him and lets his hands go. So it's going to be interesting. If Broner loses, same thing with Omar, like I said with Omar Figueroa, you lose to Jessie Vargas. And people will make the claim with Jessie Vargas only lost to Manny Pacquiao, and he lost to somebody else, if I'm not mistaken, too, didn't he? Can't remember.
I can't remember. I know
Bradley.
Yeah, Timothy Bradley. Right? So people will say, well, Vargas only lost to two of the best dudes. Yeah, but with Adrien Broner's skill set and talent, he's not supposed to be losing to a guy like Vargas. So If he loses to Vargas, Adrien Broner will probably be relegated to gatekeeper. Oh, but I mean, like I said, just from a standpoint of the fight itself, it should be an interesting fight because Vargas, like it's the way he fights, he comes at you. So, but wow, that's all I can say is just wow. This month of news has just been crazy.
This fight is going to be happening at a catch with 144 pounds. I'll go to you, Gus and Daniel. Your reaction?
You know, Mike, is anybody surprised that Broner and Figueroa, that fight didn't transpire? I think they made a mistake. They should have left the fight with an open weight category, Mike. They should have said to both fighters, the fight can happen between 140 and 175 pounds. We don't give a shit if you come in at 160, 150. I think that would have been so much better. Clearly, that is, predicated why the fight isn't happening. Two of the fattest, most ill-disciplined motherfuckers on the planet. So, no surprise there. But Jessie Vargas now Keith Thurman, he can fight Danny Garcia with bone spurs, but he refuses to fight Manny Pacquiao's leftovers injury-free. In Jessie Vargas, what does that say about Keith Thurman for you? That whole elbow injury is just an absolute load of rubbish. Just the way they manufactured that car crash. Now, I was one of the first people to come out. That was just an excuse. They just manufacture excuses with these fighters. They don't fool me for 1 second. Keith Thurman is a disgrace. So, we know fighters, Mike, who like specifically long layoffs, mate. You know why? Because they just want to cycle off whatever they've been taking. So I don't really even. And you're talking about a fighter who was 164 in the amateurs, and he's fighting at 147 in the professional ranks. You just got to ask yourself how does that happen? But Vargas, Adrien Broner, I think Vargas is going to massacre him, Mike. Adrien Broner is a completely shot fighter, Mike. You can just tell by his fighting styles, flat-footed with his hands up. He's so afraid of being knocked out. The truth is, Marcus Maidana took his soul. A guy who was absolutely he was so deluded enough to believe he was the greatest of all time. That was his methodology of thinking. When that illusion was shattered, mentally he's capitulated. Physically, he's all over the place, trying to move up. His antics in trying to talk in between the fights, that's just all fabricated. That's just all malfunction, Mike. I think Vargas is decent. I got a little bit of respect for him. I hope he goes in there and puts him out of his misery, sends him back on the fucking stretcher, so we can just get rid of this annoying Jekyll.
Tell us how you really feel, Gus. Tell us how you really feel. Daniel, your thoughts on this quickly.
Broner put out a tweet saying after this happened, trying to say, oh, he's getting out because I would have whooped his ass and he wasn't able to make the weight. Well, by the quickness of the way the Jessie Vargas came in as a replacement, your bum ass wasn't going to come in weight either when it comes to Adrien Broner. Now, this is a fight that's pretty much going to go one way because, unfortunately, ever since the Maidana fight, the main flaw in Adrien Broner has been shown light, which is if you punch him, he has to mentally reset. He's not a natural counterpuncher. He likes to be offensive, but if you hit him, he has to think. And he thinks long enough where you can land more counters on him. And Jessie Vargas, say what you will about the situation with the fight with Bradley. Say what you will about some of the home cooking he's gotten in Vegas. say what you will about the fact that he maybe didn't really deserve to win, to have won, or be in the running for a championship, but he got the job done. And ultimately, what else were you going to do if Keith Thurman wasn't going to say yes to you? You went to Heyman because you needed you wanted to get that big money, and now you're going to get it. The question now is how long is this going to last? Because Adrien Broner is a case of a fighter that bought into his own hype way too early.
Indeed. Yeah. It's the fight is happening. Yeah. I don't care much. Even if it was Figueroa, Vargas will give Broner some problems, but I'm very meh on this fight. But the news, and I'm not buying the shoulder injury at all from Jessie Vargas. Either he's still having issues, legal issues due to that DUI arrest, or he can't get down to the weight. I was suspect when they said this was going to be a bout at junior welterweight, and none of these fools can make junior welterweight, Broner or Figueroa. So it is what it is, unfortunately. Let's move forward to start previewing some fights and then start shutting down the show. I'm going to split this thing up between you individuals, between you guys. Starting with the fight, I think Friday night in South Dakota, of all places, Regis Prograis fighting Julius Ndongo on the comeback, I think, for a interim belt at 140 pounds. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on this fight?
If people want to watch what Prograis' fighting style is going to be, you can watch Show Extreme right now because there's one of his fights in the Showbox. He's a very good fighter as far as coming forward, as far as landing really good punches. And remember, originally this fight was supposed to be him and Victor Postol. Injuries apparently happened to Victor, and they were replacing with Julius Ndongo, which should present a different test while having the same attributes, because Postol is long and is very tall and has a good reach for the division. And Ndongo's pretty tall for the division too. And this should be the test for Ndongo, whether now that Bud Crawford has left the division, to stake his claim that those two victories, those two belts that I gained weren't flukes. Like they say that I am the best junior welterweight now that Bud Crawford's gone. It's gonna be a fun fight. And it's something good for Showbox. I'll admit that. Showbox is gonna have a pretty decent fight in their hand. Now, I feel bad for Ndongo that you have to go to South Dakota to do it. But he's shown he's willing to go to Russia. He's willing to go to Scotland. He's willing to go to Bud's turf. So he's a traveling man, and he's willing to go where necessary to win. It's going to be probably a good, entertaining fight. I do expect, though, Prograis to probably pull it out. And, yeah, this will put him to be the mandatory for the winner of the fight with Ramirez or Miramon.
I'll go to you, Gus. On the 10th, you have a very intriguing bout at 126 pounds. Excuse me, phone is ringing in the background. I'm sorry. I'll just proceed on. Oscar Valdez fighting Scott Quigg for Valdez's belt at 126 pounds. To me, both fighters are going to get hit, Gus. Both fighters are vulnerable. I'm looking at Valdez because he has the greater variety. He's the more diverse fighter, and plus, I don't trust Freddie Roach when it comes to defense. But your thoughts?
Mikey, it's potentially a very decent fight, and I think it could still to show. You spoke about the deficiencies of both fighters, and Scott Quigg, he's actually under Joe Gallagher, Mikey, and Joe Gallagher is notorious for not having a game plan for any of his fighters. One of the worst possible trainers out there. And we saw the way Scott Quigg, performed in the Frampton fight. Even suffering a broken jaw once the trainer did advise him to start stepping it on the gas. We saw in the second half of the fight, and certainly later on, what he was capable of doing, even under adversity of having a broken jaw. So he's a game fighter, Mike. Now, we know Valdez used Scott Quigg for the first preparation for the Miguel Mariaga when Valdez was fighting him. So Scott Quigg was brought in as his sparring partner, and I think they sparred. I'm not sure how extensively, but they seem to know. I heard Scott Quigg on radio saying that they did spar, quite a number of rounds. He didn't give the exact number, so they're very familiar with each other to a certain extent. Under a controlled sort of sparring environment. So when the opportunity came to Scott, he took it quickly. I think he's got a very good chance, Mike. He's relocated from Manchester, to Freddie, to the States, under Freddie Roach. I think Roach is one of those trainers who likes those fighters to start pivoting off, certainly pivoting off their front foot. So not become sort of one-dimensional, straight down sort of pressure fighters as what Scott has historically been doing. He's very good on the inside. He works the body very well. So he's got a chance, Mike. And, Valdez, had a lot of high hopes for him, but sadly, his lateral movement boxing, which served him well in the amateurs, has now become replaced with a fan-friendly style of loading up your punches far too much, trying to knock out your opponents. He's just losing that deceptiveness, that intricate boxing, which he did have, trying to vary your tactics, trying to vary the speed and power of your shots to prevent becoming too predictable. So he showed a great deal of vulnerabilities recently. So I think Scott Quigg has got definitely a very good chance, Mike. He may not, he's definitely not going to have any favors on the score. Where are they fighting again? Is it California?
I want to say, yeah, Carson, California. StubHub, I'm guessing.
Okay, so what we're talking about, basically a Mexican back, it's going to be predominantly Mexican based. So, Valdez, the champion, he's going to have all of the champions' advantages, certainly on the cards as well. So Scott is going to have to dominate him. Not, Scott's got a good chin as well, Mike. I think he can certainly take some punches as well. So, it might be a nice little outside bet on the Quigg, Mike. You certainly get good odds for that. He's not going to be backed by the bookies that well, but I think it's going to be a fun fight, Mike. Definitely. But I still would favor Valdez, but Quigg's definitely a live dog in the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. You just said it right there. You kind of stole my words. Quigg, I think he's the underdog heading into this bout. I think that Valdez is the favorite, and Valdez should box him because I think he has a wider variety of skills. But Quigg, he's the underdog, but he's a very live dog, and this could be potential fight of the weekend. Say the last fight, 2 fights for you, Bo. I meant Valdez and Quigg is happening on ESPN and StubHub, and Carson on Showtime. Meanwhile, in San Antonio, Sergey Lipinets fighting Mikey Garcia. Garcia moving up to 140 pounds, searching for, was it a 4th, 5th belt, something like that, 4th belt, I believe. On the undercard, Ramses Bartholomew versus Kier Relic, a rematch, I believe this fight is. Your thoughts? For me, I'll just say quickly, I think that Garcia, Lipinets, he's a solid guy, but I just think Mikey Garcia is just too talented for him, and Bartholomew, he's going to have to change some things, because if he fights like he did the first fight, he arguably lost that first fight against Relic. If he fights that way again, I think he will lose, and it'll be official this time.
Let me say something just real quick. The reason why Regis Prograis is fighting Ndongo, he chose Ndongo because of what Daniel just said. He wanted that type of a fighter. When Poster pulled out, he wanted another fighter that was a legitimate champion there, so he can say, I beat a legitimate former champion. So he actually chose Ndongo. I interviewed him. When I interviewed him, he said that in the interview. arguably lost the fight. No, it wasn't arguably lost the fight. He lost the fight. He lost that fight, and I spared no bones in about me saying that I felt like he got a gift that night. I really do. Relke won that fight. So going into this fight, if he doesn't find the Rance Bartholomew that won titles at 130 and 135, he could mess around and not become the first Cuban fighter to ever win 3 titles in 3 separate weight divisions. And I know how important that is for him. He has Joel Casamayor in his corner. So he's definitely going to have to change the way he's going to have to go back to that Rance Bartholomew. He's trying to be a more appealing fighter, but that's not who you are, right? So he has to go back to boxing. He has to go back to moving. He has to go back to judging distance and space. He's just going to have to go back to that. And if he doesn't, I agree with you. Relke actually coming in this fight is probably riding on such a higher wave because he knows, man, I gave this dude all I got. I can rock this guy. So in my opinion, Rance Bartholomew is going to have one of those same performances that I felt that my man Benavidez needed. He needs to prove without a shadow of a doubt it was a fluke because this is for a vacant title. So, I'm hard pressed to pick because I just don't know what I'm going to get from Rance, and I'm just so hard pressed to pick because I really don't know what I'm going to get from Rance. And it's like we know that's not the best of him, but that might just be who he is now as a fighter because that seemed to be in his mind. And then Mikey Garcia, like you said, Mikey Garcia is just going up. He's another one like Inoue. I hope he's just grabbing the belt, but doesn't leave 135 because 135 is starting to heat up. There are some fights down there, and it would be a shame for Linares to get, for Loma to get Linares before Mikey was able to get Linares. That'll just be a shame for that to happen, and it would definitely be a shame for if they do fight, Mikey doesn't get the winner. There's still some good quality fights that could be made at 135 for Mikey. So I'm hoping this is something that where he's just grabbing the belt because he hasn't relinquished his other belt. So hoping he's grabbing the belt just to add more stock to his profile. So if he goes to fight at 135, he got more when he sit down at the negotiation table and be like, okay, this is my profile. This is what it is. What you got. This is it could be a move where he could be the A side in any fight going, because of like, listen, I'm a 4-division champion, so he should beat Lipnitz. He's just the better boxer. He's the smart boxer. But I will say this: I'm curious as to if Lipnitz lands a grazing punch or a hard punch on Mikey's nose, what'll happen? Because Adrien Broner did, and that nose seemed to start bleeding and bothering Mikey. And I don't think it never fully really healed from the Orlando Salido fight. So
Yeah,
that's going to be something I'm going to be looking for.
He did damage to his nose as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, he did. So I'm going to be paying close attention to that. But like you said, Mikey Garcia, very good, slick, smart boxer. If he knocks out Lipinets, oh my God! If that means his power actually carried up with him, that'll be something impressive to see.
Indeed. I think we're going to wrap things up. Episode 200 in the books. I want to thank, get this name correct. I want to thank Scorsese for joining us on the show earlier. I want to thank Tony Man 2C in the chat for joining us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for everybody else who was watching live on YouTube. Going to go around the panel here, go around the hangout. Started with you, Daniel from the Inscriber, for those who want to talk to Sweet Science. For those who want to talk NBA, specifically the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter at Raucus99. You can also find the podcast that I do with the folks at ForwardBoxingNews.com on ForwardBoxingNews.com's website with Joe and Francis. And we had a fun with this week with you, Mike, and Bo. Had reviewed all the fights coming into it. And once again, because it's still happening, fuck this snowstorm.
Indeed. Gus from Corruption and Boxing. I got him to come out the Batcave. For those who want to talk the Sweet Science, for those who want to talk music, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Of course, Mike. I had to take clenbuterol myself, Mike, just to stay up for the show today. But I had to do it, Mike. You know what I mean. So mad respect again. But yeah, corruption in boxing, all platforms. I'm gonna start expanding the channel. I'm gonna try and do some sort of more diverse videos, Mike. I want to start talking about economics, politics. I've got some videos coming out on, the Federal Reserve and North Korea, etc. So I'm going to start getting into, geopolitical topics as well.
No, that's going to be it. That's interesting. That's interesting to hear. Both from Truth and Facts About Boxing, from Three Kings Boxing, the man who's trying to put out a video trying to make me famous and infamous at the same damn time. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to into apps, for those who want to follow the adventures of you and your daughter, let the folks know where they can find you.
Well, first of all, I also had to take clenbuterol, and I had to take my blood pressure pills as well, to keep my stamina up and, to keep my blood pressure down so I can do these shows and work this job and all of that, man. So I want to thank the pharmaceutical companies for giving me the products that I need at my advanced age to keep all this going. But yeah, you can find me at Truth and Facts About Boxing on YouTube. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at capital T for Truth_capital F for Fact Box 1. Like Mike said, you can go to my Facebook page and you can catch edit clips of videos and stuff like that I make and I post up there. And of course, you can follow me and I post stuff of me and my daughter, who is trying to break the bank or break my back. I don't know what she's trying to do no more. She's getting older and getting on my nerves. But she's not my son, so I'll love her, but I'll bust his head. So you can also follow that on Facebook. And listen, it was great to be back here. Shout out to Gail, who's always putting out some great stories. Also, shout out to Jacob. He couldn't be here today, but shout out to him. Yeah, shout out to Jacob, who couldn't be here today. So, and everybody thanking and congratulations on episode 200 for Pound. I really wanted to make it for that, just for that, because this is an historical event, an historical monument. And mad props to Mike for showing us that he's one of the clan. Wakanda.
I still cannot believe I missed that.
Wakanda forever. Appreciate it, brother. Appreciate it. For those who want to talk, the sweet science, for those who want to talk music, fitness, you know what it is. Brother JR, or now Brother Wakanda on Twitter, at Brother JR76. Again, as I said to begin the show, if you want to check out all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. Check the Rather page, and you can find links to the channels, pages on Facebook, on G Plus YouTube, the Twitter handle, which is at P4P Boxing Report, as well as the Twitter handles at P4P Boxing Report, as well as the link for the Tumblr page. And also, if you check the Rather page, you can find the links where to listen to the show: SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, Player FM for the folks in the UK, as well as Mixcloud. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Prograis and Dungo, Valdez, Quigg, Lipinets, Garcia, the Ramses Bartholomew Relic bout, and we will do a review of those bouts, and a preview of Jose Ramirez, Emir Imam, something Daniel alluded to during his discussion about Prograis and Dungo. Also talk Alexander Gvozdyk, and I'm just putting it out there, Bo. If you can, please try to make the show next week, because I want to talk Linus Udofia, a guy both of us has interviewed in the past, 2016 and 2017, rising UK middleweight, who I think is a really good prospect out there. So I want to talk about him as well. So for Scorsese, who joined us on the show earlier, if you want to talk boxing or anything else with him, you can check him out on Twitter, at Milo Place, on Facebook, not on Facebook, but on G Plus YouTube. Low place hashtag MLPF. So for low place, for Daniel of the Inscriber, from Gus from Corruption and Boxing, Bo of Truth and Facts About Boxing, as well as Three Kings Boxing. I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 200 of Pound for Pound Box Report. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. Everybody have a good evening. Good night.
Sayonara.